Welcome back. Ever since I took up the job as a police dispatcher, my nights were inundated with distress calls from all around the city. Misplaced anxieties, petty disputes, genuine pleas for help, I heard it all. But nothing could have prepared me for the call that would come in every night at exactly 3:33 a.m. The first call came on a bitter winter's night, the wind howling outside like some enraged specter. As a police dispatcher, I was accustomed to the occasional late-night emergency call. The time displayed on the illuminated screen of the phone was 3:33 a.m. I picked up the receiver, my heart sinking as a hauntingly familiar voice filled the silence. It was the voice of a child, her words choked with fear. "I'm scared," she whimpered, her voice barely audible. "Can you help me?" Each subsequent night, at precisely 3:33 a.m., the calls would return. The voice of the same child, filled with an increasing sense of urgency, echoed through the barren dispatch center, the desperate pleas for help penetrating the room's stifling silence. Each call felt like a surreal dream, the child's words floating through the air like apparitions. Despite my numerous attempts to trace the call, its origin remained a mystery. Yet, an innate sense of dread convinced me that these were not just simple prank calls. There was an uncanny truth in the child's voice, a truth that whispered of a hidden horror. A month into the calls, the child's voice on the line began to change, carrying an ominous tone. "They're coming," she'd whisper, her voice barely more than a breath. "They're coming for me." Every nerve in my body screamed for action. The frustration of not being able to trace the call or to provide any substantial help was eating at me. The child's haunting words rang in my ears, each call becoming a morbid clockwork nightmare. My determination fueled a private investigation, poring over old case files and dispatch records during my off hours. I scoured the internet for missing child reports, hoping for a clue that would lead me to the mysterious girl. I finally stumbled upon a cold case file from about 2 decades ago. A 5-year-old girl named Emily had vanished without a trace from her home, leaving her devastated parents and a baffled police force in her wake. What piqued my interest was the recurring nightmares that Emily used to have. Nightmares where she'd scream about unseen entities coming for her. My heart pounded in my chest as I stared at the image of Emily, her dark, innocent eyes reflecting a deep-seated fear. Was this our mysterious caller? I shared my findings with my superiors, but my theory was met with cynical skepticism. Undeterred, I continued my investigation, driven by an unshakable conviction that Emily was reaching out for help. In my desperation to help Emily, I reached out to paranormal experts, even dabbling in the arcane myself. One particular psychic, Agnes, stood out. A woman of advanced years, Agnes had dedicated her life to understanding the spiritual realm. With a keen sense of empathy, she offered to help Emily find her peace. Over time, Agnes became more than just an ally in my quest. She served as a mentor, guiding me through my fear and uncertainty. She helped me understand that Emily was not a threat, but rather a lost soul desperately reaching out for help. Agnes shared with me the complexities of the spirit realm, explaining how some spirits, like Emily, could get trapped in their moment of death, reliving their fear and despair over and over again. Agnes believed that Emily could break free from this cycle if she was made to realize that she wasn't helpless, that she could fight back. I understood then that my role was not just to be a passive receiver of Emily's distress calls, but to be a beacon of hope for her. As the nights wore on, I found myself evolving from a scared dispatcher to a brave crusader, ready to fight the unseen battle. Each night as the clock struck 3:33 a.m., I would brace myself for Emily's call. Over time, our conversations took on a new tone. Instead of responding with rehearsed lines, I began to talk to her, encouraging her, supporting her, and urging her to fight. I arranged a visit to Emily's old house, hoping to find any residual energy or clues. The house, long abandoned, bore an uncanny air of gloom, its decrepit state seeming almost symbolic of the hopelessness of Emily's case. As we entered the house, I felt an immediate chill, an unseen weight pressing down on us. The empath, a middle-aged woman named Agnes, seemed deeply affected. She confirmed that there was a strong spiritual energy in the house, one filled with fear and desperation. The energy was powerful and childlike, echoing my eeriest suspicions. We were dealing with Emily's spirit, The paranormal investigator suggested conducting a seance to establish contact. I was hesitant but agreed, realizing it might be the only way to help Emily. The seance was a surreal experience. The flickering candlelight casting grotesque shadows on the walls, the eerie silence punctuated by Agnes's hypnotic voice, and the growing sense of anticipation created an atmosphere of chilling suspense. At precisely 3:33 a.m., as Agnes beckoned Emily's spirit to communicate, the air around us turned ice cold. A sudden gust of wind blew out the candles, plunging us into darkness. Then the phone in my pocket vibrated. It was a call from the dispatch center. The time displayed on the screen sent chills down my spine. 3:33 a.m. The calls weren't coming from a distant location. They were coming from the very house we were in. I answered the call, holding my breath. Emily's voice echoed in the darkness, pleading for help. The room reverberated with a tangible fear, the intensity of her call sending us into a panicked frenzy. The line went dead. Silence descended upon us, a silence so thick it was almost suffocating. The seance ended, leaving us with more questions than answers. We knew now for certain that Emily's spirit was trapped, crying out for help through the dispatch line. But how could we help her? What was the looming threat she was so afraid of? How did it all tie together? I started dedicating my days to finding any trace of Emily's past. I contacted retired officers, interviewed old neighbors, and even tracked down Emily's distant relatives. As I dug deeper into her past, I uncovered a tale of chronic abuse and neglect that filled me with a profound sense of anger. It was during one of these investigative days that I met Sarah, a former social worker who had been assigned to Emily's case. A woman in her early 50s, Sarah still carried the weight of guilt for not having been able to save Emily. Together, Sarah and I became unlikely partners. Her knowledge of Emily's life and my communication with Emily's spirit served as the two halves of a whole. We complemented each other's efforts, working tirelessly to put together the pieces of Emily's shattered past. It wasn't long before the 3:33 a.m. calls started to change. Emily's cries of fear were replaced by determined statements. I could sense a shift in her tone, a newfound resilience that hadn't been there before. I was filled with hope, but this change also sparked a new concern. I couldn't shake off the feeling that Emily's time was running out. I knew I had to find a way to help her break free from her cycle of fear, and soon. As the clock ticked closer to 3:33 a.m. each night, I could feel my heart rate picking up. There was a strange mix of fear, anticipation, and hope, knowing that each call could potentially be Emily's last. I started having long conversations with Agnes about Emily's plight. We discussed numerous possibilities, exploring every lead, however tenuous. It was during one of these discussions that Agnes suggested something I hadn't considered before. "We need to confront her fear," she said, her eyes reflecting a fierce determination. "Emily needs to face what terrifies her the most." "But how?" I asked, unsure of how to implement her suggestion. "We'll figure it out," she reassured me. "We've come this far, haven't we?" With Agnes's words ringing in my ears, I was determined to find a way to help Emily confront her fear, not realizing how much it would demand from me. Convinced of the course, I set to work with a renewed sense of urgency. The days blurred into nights, and I started taking breaks only when my body would protest against the lack of sleep. I pored over police reports, witness statements, and court documents trying to identify Emily's source of fear. One afternoon, while going through a stack of old witness statements, I stumbled upon a small, almost insignificant detail. One of Emily's neighbors had reported hearing strange noises at night, a peculiar creaking sound. The statement seemed to suggest that the sound was associated with Emily's abusive stepfather. I presented the information to Sarah and Agnes, suggesting that the creaking sound might have been an auditory trigger for Emily. As it turned out, this small detail was the missing piece we had been looking for. Using Sarah's knowledge of Emily's past, Agnes's understanding of spiritual connections, and my ability to communicate with Emily, we decided to confront Emily's fear with the very sound that terrified her the most. The following night, as the clock edged towards 3:33 a.m., I sat in front of the dispatch console with a creaking sound effect ready to play. My heart pounded in my chest as I waited for Emily's call. As expected, the phone rang precisely at 3:33 a.m. With a shaking hand, I answered the call and heard Emily's small voice through the static. "Help me," she whimpered. I tried to steady my voice. "Emily, I need you to listen to something. It might be scary, but I need you to be brave. Can you do that for me?" There was a pause before Emily's voice came through, barely a whisper. "Okay." I hit play on the sound effect. The creaking noise filled the dispatch room, and through the phone I could hear Emily's sharp intake of breath. There was a long silence, and for a moment I feared that we had made a terrible mistake. Then Emily's voice came through the speaker, but this time there was something different about it. It was stronger, firmer. "I'm not afraid," she declared. The connection fizzled for a moment, a static buzz crackling over the line, and then silence. The clock flickered to 3:34 a.m. The room plunged into an unsettling quiet. I held my breath, waiting, hoping. From that night onward, Emily no longer called in fear. Each night at 3:33 a.m., she would call to report that she was safe and unafraid. I could sense her growing stronger with each call, her spirit gradually breaking free from its traumatic shackles. My life started returning to normal, or as normal as it could get. The constant undercurrent of fear and uncertainty was replaced with a strange sense of fulfillment. I had been a part of something bigger than myself, something that had brought about a positive change. One night, exactly a year after Emily's calls had started, the phone rang at 3:33 a.m. I picked up, expecting to hear Emily's voice, but there was only silence. A silence that wasn't unsettling or fearful, but peaceful, almost serene. It was Emily's final call. She had found her peace, and in helping her, I had found mine. In the following weeks, I returned to Emily's old house, now a beacon of serene quietness. Agnes confirmed that the energy there had changed. The heavy dread was gone, replaced by a peaceful stillness. Emily's spirit, it seemed, had finally found its rest. Sarah and Agnes too found peace in the resolution, each claiming to feel a lightness that hadn't been there before. We started meeting less frequently, our mission accomplished. But the bond we had formed during this unique journey remained unbroken. Years passed and life continued in its unpredictable rhythm. I got promoted, and I moved out of the graveyard shift, working regular hours and getting my sleep cycle back to normal. But the memories of those nights, of Emily's haunting plea for help and our fight against her unseen tormentor, stayed with me. My experience with Emily taught me more about fear and courage than any book or person ever could. It wasn't just about the fear of the dark or monsters under the bed. It was about confronting the demons of our past, no matter how terrifying they might be. Sarah eventually retired from her job at the Child Protective Services, dedicating her time to work with troubled kids and help them confront and overcome their fears. Agnes, too, continued her spiritual work, counseling those who, like Emily, were trapped in limbo, offering them comfort and guidance, helping them find their way to peace. Whenever I find myself doubting, questioning the reality of what transpired, I remember Emily's voice, a terrified whisper in the night, forever etched into the annals of my memory. To this day, I often find myself glancing at the clock at 3:33 a.m., remembering Emily, her courage, her fight, her victory. It's a haunting reminder of the experience that changed my life forever. But above all, it's a reminder of a little girl's voice that taught me the true meaning of fear and courage. And for that, I will always be grateful.